And so part of my residency in the summer was once I decided that once a week I was going to devote a day of studio time to making a Black Lives Matter tribute portrait. And I call this my Rest and Recover in Power series. It started off as just George, and I didn't know I was going to do a series, but I just did George and walked him, down to the rotunda. It was very powerful because, there's just a lot of history in Charlottesville. And literally today when I was doing live painting, there was a Black Lives Matter march by the window, and it was next to Heather Heyer Way. Anyway, so this is a very potent place. And I found that I kept, after I painted George, he sat in my house and I'm just talking to him, and something about sitting with his story and actually staring into his eyes and studying everything about his face. It's he then was walking inside of my head, because as an artist, when you, if you sort of filter a person, if you manifest a person on paper, they leave an imprint on you. And so he stuck with me. And I thought, I need to add more people to create more space in this little guest room in my heart, to learn more people's stories, because the news was so overwhelming. I was hitting compassion fatigue wall, but I was okay, I can handle one person at a time. I can manage that. So I'm going to do that. So each week I picked a different person who I felt really compelled to tell their story, or there was someone who I would see in the news, but I didn't really know who they were. It just, I want to turn them from a headline buzzword to an actual human, because, someone is a stranger until you know their story, and then they're your friend. And then I wanted to also be able to share their story with other people, because as an artist, I am I carry stories with me. And it's always such an honor and a privilege to help, unpack, oh, here's a story for you. Whether it's about Charlottesville history or about victims of police brutality, at least I can, help reflect, more information to people in just, the space that I'm navigating in my everyday life and people that I see. And I have to say that I normally don't do portraits. In my comics, I draw me. So it was really intimidating to do large scale portraits of people who don't like me, because cartoonists, we are our default. So I've always actually struggled with drawing men, because I draw men that look like me. And so they got the little lanky shoulders and things. And I really deprogrammed a lot of how I draw people doing this project, because there were a lot of mental conversations, because in Mona, for example, I really struggled with Aisha's hair. I didn't know what to do with Aisha's hair. So now I'm well, drawing Amanda today, I was oh, well, I got her hair now. Because so I was the sides, I don't have those sides. So it's I don't know, it's just different textures and proportions. And so now, it was good for me to practice drawing people who, it's not just drawings of me, because also I think I'm a little tired of drawing of me. So I'd made those portraits and I didn't really know what to do with them. And thankfully there was a design firm actually that has an empty window in the front. And so they were we're letting artists do installations. So I applied and they said, cool. So it's actually a 3-month installation, and it features all 12 portraits, plus it has information about all the different subjects, a little paragraph and a link to everyone's families or the funds that have been set up in people's honor. And I also, actually there's a little artist statement, but actually my bio is teeny tiny. It's itty bitty. Cause I was this is about everybody else's names, not mine. And it's sort of the pictures, they're all painted on 2 sides. So in the window, you can actually see on the back sides all the different sort of more protest style signs. They're all in cardboard and made with India ink because I drew them with white Conte crayon, which you see there on Toyin. Because I really wanted to keep it as simple and accessible as possible, because I'm all about accessibility. Because I want a kid to be able to see what I'm doing. I could be like, yeah, you can do this, because I'm, it's just cardboard. Actually, the hardest part of this project was writing the little bios there for each person, because I thought, I just want to make portraits of people. I don't want to have to actually like write a summary of this person's life and death. That's much more journalism territory. So I actually reached out to a journalist friend and had her do a sensitivity sweep with me, going through just even like the language I was using. So I learned so much, and I was making that when the Capitol attack happened, and I sort of was, I had like physically, I just like, it was, yeah, I sort of like lost it for a couple days, because this exhibit is right next to Heather Heyer Way, which you can see like the chalk on the wall written there. So that's where the activist in Charlottesville was killed by when the car drove into the crowd. And so this exhibit is literally right next, it's like up the block from it. So it's a really potent location. And gosh, it's awful to say this, but today when I was in there painting in the window, there were like some men outside with like hoodies and hats on. And my first thought that popped in my head was like, oh my God, it's some of those like white nationalist dudes. And they like saw that I'm painting in the paper, and they're like here to like, I don't know, spread some hate. But then I saw like, oh, they're just normal dudes. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that I thought that. But that's the Capitol stuff. It really re-triggered a lot, because Charlottesville was really traumatized. So it's just, so, but thankfully that's why you ask for help. And speaking of help, the centerpiece in the window is a collaboration with my new partner, LaQuinn, who I met during pandemic through like free marketplace, because I was giving something away and he picked it up, and I'd seen his like stickers, and he does really fun sort of like street guerrilla marketing, which as a street artist, I always would like notice his stuff. I was like, who's this LaQuinn guy? So I met him, I was like, oh my God, it's you. And so we decided to make this centerpiece for the window. It looks like a big composition notebook, but it has lyrics from his song Black Lives Matter, which is sort of, it's lyrics like, yeah, what are we teaching? And we're teaching people to love or hate. Because he grew up in Charlottesville. And actually the night, so here's LaQuinn writing out the song lyrics. And actually a few hours after that, he was assaulted by the police and in the hospital. So it was really, it was an intense week, people. I just say, it was a little too much art imitating life, imitating art. Like, but also like, this is so, yeah, it just makes everything, all this more potent and real and urgent. So he actually has like a GoFundMe that I've helped share with my community, and started like a watchdog group. And I learned working with him on the project that Sage Smith, one of my subjects, who's my local girl, my local trans girl, she's been missing. I don't know, she's been missing for like years now. I forget what year it was, because my brain is melted. But I learned that Sage Smith was his niece. So, and her middle name is LaQuinn. So I was like, hold on a minute. So like, I didn't even know that it's your, so yeah. So I was so excited that we got to, I don't know, it was like we were meant to partner. And then, oh yeah, here's some pictures from today. So today I painted Amanda Gorman, because I was really concerned about this exhibit being too much depiction of Black death. And this is a quote I actually saw in an exhibit in Charlottesville 2 days ago, and I swiped it. So I wanted to do portraits that celebrate like living, inspiring Black Lives Matter figures that we should be supporting now, instead of just, like, oh, these are all the people we've lost. It's like, well, no, we have to like, I don't know, we need to also focus on the joy and the life and the love. So I call this the Live in Peace series. So I'm going to do Kehinde Wiley next week to balance poet and visual artist. And so for those, I sort of crowds like asked everybody like, who do you want? So, okay, so now takeaway. I guess with all of this stuff, My number one takeaway from this year is having the beginner's mindset, sort of playfulness about everything. And so that's like what I was talking about, not expecting the milk to be cow milk, like it's just all different. This is also stripping away expectations of old world and beginner's mind. I feel like that looking at things like a kid who doesn't know the rules and with this sort of curiosity is a lot better, and I get better results than when I'm like really fearful and have my old expectations, like it's supposed to be this. And so I've really been tapping into play. And I think that the dance, color guard sort of movement and singing, like I make up songs all the time. So I think exploring those mediums that use my body more has really helped me sort of, I don't know, loosen up. It's almost like an improv class or something. So now I'm thinking more with my heart than my head. And so that's been really helpful. And also just to follow what is fun and playful. You know, some stuff isn't playful, like, you know, adapting to technology, for example, and new tools and things. But when it comes to my creative stuff, I definitely am following like, okay, where's the fun and the play? Because it's all about experimentation and innovation and invention. So that's what I'm looking at with everything, with that lens of like an inventor. So really letting go of those past ideas, maybe because I just broke my heart. And also 1.0 over 2.0, because I think most creative people, we already have this problem of thinking about, we get an idea like, we could do the 2.0. So instead of like, oh, maybe I could show these, you know, like portraits somewhere downtown. You know, my big idea was like, oh, I should get a group that would take it to March on Washington, you know, and think like 2.0 and 3.0. But then I was like, you know, well, let's just do 1.0. You can always do the 2.0, but a lot of times we're so hung up on like the really big grand idea that we won't settle for we won't settle for something smaller. But I say just do anything. So like, that's why I like the mini comics, because then you just make it and you just, you know, it takes like a couple days and then poof, it's done. And then I'm like, oh, the next thing. So is it a 200-page graphic novel? No, it's definitely not as impressive. But hey, it's something. And at this point, you know, in this situation of constant stress, yeah, any ideas you have, just like chop it in half and make it twice as long as, you know, time to execute. So it's the realistic. So yeah, make everything super simplified and make the bar really low for yourself. And approach it with that playfulness. And then of course, the 3 things that I was not doing a year ago. Well, I was dancing a little bit, but not nearly as much as I am now. It wasn't like in my daily life. And I definitely wasn't doing color guard. I didn't nap like at all. And prayer is a new thing. And I do consider prayer sort of a creative practice because I sort of wrote out, I don't know, it's like a poem sort of thing. So those are the things that have helped me. And that photo is a picture from when I was moving, because I moved twice this year. My heart goes out to anybody who's moving in a pandemic. And so one thing I did was that I wrote notes to myself when I was packing. So when I was unpacking, then I would come across the notes. So there were things like, go hug the cat, or go take a break, or you look beautiful today, darling. And okay. Yeah, and I guess my little closing slide here. Oh yeah, here's me. I've done a lot of blessings at the installation. So when I first declared it done, I wove my little peace flag around to sort of bless it, because that whole block is just sort of a wound. Even today when I was in there, I did a little blessing just for, you know, the honor of getting to, make the work that I do and honoring the land that I'm on and all that stuff. Because also I've been doing some ancestor research about my ancestors who were here years ago. So that's part of the reason that I feel like I'm inspired to, do more of the public side. And I realized I did not introduce one of my little vocabulary words in here. Citizen artist, did I talk? I don't think I mentioned citizen artist. I think that's the only thing I missed. but it's basically an idea that I got from the Kennedy Center that an artist is sort of half a citizen and half an artist, and we have a responsibility to do work that connects, to the community and helps cultivate harmony and unity and connection with others and social change. And I like the idea that artists, our ultimate reason for doing our work is to heal ourselves, but then to spill out beyond just our studio. I mean, we don't just have these gifts for ourselves. So I sort of like the next level of, how to use your art to actually make an impact in your community. And also it helps with isolation. So that's helpful too. So I just threw a lot of things at you guys. So I'm curious if you have any questions.
Yeah, Laura Lee, do you want to unshare your screen so you can see everyone and everyone can see you?
Yes.
There is one. So
again.
Well, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. We're so strange to not be in a room together. Agim has a question. In a setting in which is surrounded by much death and horror the past year, was it easy to distinguish between promoting Black culture and deaths surrounding Black lives in 2020, such as the example you've just shared? And Agim, if you want to unmute yourself and say anything about this, because I don't know which example directly.
Yeah, it was an early example that she used, earlier, I would say 10 minutes ago, but I kind of like where you finished the presentation where as an artist, you have a responsibility to inform the public and be a citizen at the same time. I like how you tie that into the presentation in your art. So I think that answers most of the question, but I guess when you were making art on the individuals that were lost earlier in 2020 and surrounding that with Black Lives Matter, and then thinking to yourself, but Black Lives Matter is much more of a movement than promoting Black death. It's a movement that is also supposed to promote Black culture. So the example that she used earlier with the girl, I'm blanking out on her name and I apologize.
Amanda Gorman.
Yeah, I think that was an excellent thing to do, because so much in the news and in the media, we hear about so many Black deaths, and we don't get the chance to promote Black culture and Black entrepreneurs and just, I guess, culture in general of many African Americans. So I think that was something great that as a citizen and as an artist that you did. So I just wanted to compliment you on that.
Well, thanks. That's also why I brought LaQuinn in, because I was like, I want to make a new piece with a local artist, and because also I think that all art right now, at least I've been thinking about it a lot, that we can't have more monologues. I feel like that everything needs to be a conversation, or at least maybe I'm just at this point in my creative career where I feel confident enough with my own stuff that I can collaborate more. But I feel like even there's a responsibility with any project that you have to look at it from all the different angles, that there needs to be a conversation about it. Like with the musical, we had a lot of conversations about, like, can we have different members of the same family be played by different ethnicities? Because like Will and her Aunt Ella are white and Black. We're like, well, a lot of our families are this way. So let's have this, because we want to have something that reflects much more diversity and much more, I don't know, there was a lot of sensitivity sweeping too. Even things that were from just like 5 years ago in the script were suddenly like, oh no, this is not, we need to, part of it is educating ourselves. And then part of it is to, include more perspectives in our work. And because also I think it just makes the work better. That's what it's like street art. I'm like, I want more people to put their stuff out there, because then it's a conversation. I just like platforms where you can include more people. In Charlottesville especially, because Charlottesville is very segregated. I don't know if I don't hang out at hip hop shows. I don't know if I would have met LaQuinn or connected. So I think that pandemic is, I don't know, it's sort of the walls are down and the old social networks are disjointed. So it's little musical chairs. Like I can, I don't know, connect with people, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't encounter if I was hanging out with my same group of friends pre-pandemic.
I agree. That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Other people have questions or comments? I know that was a lot of information.
Yeah. I know, I want to do a whole series of the living in peace portraits.
Melina has a question or something to say.
Yeah, so, you say Charlottesville is such a, intense area, especially politically. Like, how's that process of making your street art seen? And has there been, a negative response since, compared to New York, like you said, there's, zero street art. How has been the response?
Honestly, I don't know a response for anything, because I feel like that in a world where I was interacting in person, and even when I was teaching with audio, you get feedback. But this situation, I don't really know I know nothing about what people think about the street art, because I don't see people to get feedback. So there has not been that negative backlash. I was mostly just concerned about me as a white artist putting up pictures of Queen Charlotte, a woman of color. That was my number one concern, because I don't want to tell anybody a story for them. I want to help amplify. If anything, I want to pass the mic. I want to, I don't know, help connect, help build bridges. So that's why my ego is sort of, this year is, after book tour was whooshed, because book tour was all ego. Let's just be honest. That was going to be an ego little fluffy time. But once that was sort of shattered and crumbled, and it was not about me, I feel like it's made the work a lot better. And also thinking more about the community here, because it's just, I don't know, it's frustrating, but also I have ancestors who were here. So I've been learning about them, some radical Quakers. Who knew? Yeah, no, I forgot what the original question was.
No, you got it. Yeah, and I really appreciate that you use your platform now to really share the stories of others, and you're sensitive about that.
Well, the stories are alive, and who's telling the stories is important.
I have a question for you regarding as an artist. You talked a lot about specifically WOMCon and how you that was a very collaborative thing. As an artist, how do you get something like that off the ground in terms of especially in the digital age and the pandemic age as well, where people have so many commitments and it's hard to reach people? What are some tactics that you use to get those kind of collaborative things off the ground? Do you just have to kind of do it yourself and then see who kind of comes along, or is it more collaborative than that?
Oh, I wish it was way more collaborative, but people don't have a lot of bandwidth and they're really overstretched. So yeah, if you want someone to collaborate with you on something, you got to make it really easy for them. So I did most of the work for WOMCon. I think my friend Hannah, who is in town here, we met at the farmer's market, and it was over a couple farmer's market talks where it was so I got this idea and you want to do it with me? And I felt like I was trying, trying to talk her into something. But I think that just finding simple things that the collaborators can do. So I just sort of made her in charge of I think it'd be cool if we had a little print your own name badge. So people at home or people there we could print it and then decorate it. And so I put her in charge of that. And that was really her only thing to do. And yeah, so basically I did all the work and just gave small pieces for everybody to do. And then their number one gift was just their presence and just to sort of be part of the conversation and bring their energy to it. But as far as ahead of time, yeah, the only reason I get it done is if I basically did all the heavy lifting. But I do have a I've done event production and teaching, so it was really easy for me because also I picked something that is fun for me. Like I miss doing event production. So I designed an event that was super simple and then just sort of reached out to the other ladies to see who was interested. And yeah, basically like each person's just responsible for their piece and yeah, not too much more. I know it's a terrible answer to that question, but it's just really hard. Like, because people say they're going to do stuff. Most of the time, they're not going to do it. They want to do it, but then it just, because
that's
so
why
they have ownership. So I guess making sure they have ownership. Because if they don't feel they have ownership, then they're not going to do it. But if they feel like that they're like, like I made a banner with all our pictures in it, and I feel like that makes them like, oh, I'm part of this thing, and so I need to follow through. So yeah, when they feel like that they see themselves in it, then, because people also need to be invited. People need to be wooed. You don't just put out an idea. You sort of gotta like sweet talk them, So yeah, you gotta sort of bend over backwards a little bit for them. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Anybody else?
Other questions or comments? I know Agim wrote another comment, but I want to know if anyone else anything.
This isn't really a question. This is more like a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I like really enjoy how you speak. It's very like personable. It's like it reminds me of like a real conversation, and I appreciate that.
Yes.
Kira, did you
I feel like part of what I can contribute to the Zoom space classroom is just to be myself, because I feel like that's, as artists, some part of our job is just to show up being our little authentic selves, and that's it.
Kira, did you want to say something?
No, I really like her personality. It's very showing. Like artists that you meet tend to be like very outgoing people. I've met a few like reserved, but you're very like well spoken and you're very talented. So.
Well, introverts are only only seem extroverted when we're actually talking about things we care about.
Yeah, I can relate. I have one of those.
Yeah, so I've spent years honing passion, and anything that's not passion, like not trying to force it on me. And so, yeah. So if you're also an introvert, then yeah, just stick with the stuff that makes you come out of your shell, and balancing it with lots of that self-care. So after this talk, I'm going to just like.
So Agim wrote, in an unfortunate way, if we didn't have a pause in our lives, would BLM and social movements that challenge the structure in this country have been this impactful? In this medium, politics, art, music, etc., expose this. Poetic justice, unfortunately, it took away many lives. In 2020, with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, past years, the horrors of many myths from leaders. So, yeah, I definitely agree. I think people had time to protest. I think that's why so many people, I talked about this with my friends, so many people, a mutual friend of ours, of Laura Lee's and mine, Andrea, like we went to the protest together and we were talking about how if everyone had to be in their offices, would they have really been able to go out and protest? So Laura Lee, and then you were making art in it. So what is your response to this?
I know, all the art I shared in this presentation is all stuff from this past year. And a lot of it, I don't think it would have happened if it was business as usual. So I thought about rest a lot this year. It really permeated the work. And I think part of that is because we were forced to stop. And part of stopping means that we are dealing with emotions and dealing with all these horrible truths that have been just like right under the surface. For years now, but we get so like, oh, we're just so busy. I can't deal with, like, I got all my things to do. But it's forced us to stop and like grieve a lot of things, humans and ways of life and old communities and connections. So it's been a lot of processing, but I think it's been so important that everyone is like, stop, you're going to all look. Like, it's like, look at this. You know, because I think Charlottesville, it was activated a little earlier because, I mean, it was just sort of before this past summer, like Charlottesville was having conversations I'd never heard before about racial justice. And well, I guess I should say legal justice, you know, well, legal, was it? No, it's not legal justice. Yeah, because it's legal. Oh, I heard a thing in a podcast the other day. It was saying it's not justice. It's like just like legal. Anyway, no, I forget what I was doing. My train of thought. That's why I don't consume a lot of extra content, because then it puts all these new things in my head and then it disrupts my flow. But how in Charlottesville, yeah, we hadn't had these conversations. So like as an artist, taking part in the Signs of Change project they basically enlisted all these local artists, and we connected with a historian, and we did workshops at these historical talks about the real history of Charlottesville and did like art lessons with it. And so it empowered the artists of the community with the truth. And I thought that was just the most brilliant thing that we could possibly do, because if you give the artists the information, we turn it into story and into art, and we are the bridges. So that was like, yeah. So I think that project a few years ago, it helped me learn how to, I don't know, sort of, I mean, to get into like the history and the language, and to, I mean, there's a lot of discomfort that comes with some of this deprogramming. Especially in the South, because I've always sort of hated my Southernness. But this work, I feel like, is part of me. It's part of my story of self-acceptance too, because there's like a sort of a bit of a self-hatred in the South. Like there's this shame. And so part of me healing myself it's like my ancestor work as well, because I'm like, we need to change the story of what the South is. I don't want to be embarrassed that my name is Laura Lee, you know, because it's always been like, oh, you're from the South. I'm like, yes. They're like, yes, but I'm not a racist, you know. But so yeah, it's like, so we'll sit down and read a 700-page book about the history of the Hemmings family. So this is the sort of work. It's like, okay, I want to change the stories in my head and make them real. And these aren't just people, they're humans, they have stories and lives. So I feel like that's what artists can do, is that look at Hamilton. This is what happens when arters consume a lot of information and some truth and history. I feel like that we can filter it into new, like, re-envisioning of the story.
Yeah, well,
if that made sense, but that was a bit rambly.
We're going to be watching Hamilton actually in this class, but we're also going to be looking at it at the lens of like, how much can you rewrite and what happens with race. We're going to be delving into that a lot. So Sock says, do you feel like as an artist, the responsibility to make art that is political or to express yourself in a political way has a tendency to be a sort of burden?
This is a very new thing for me. My art was always about just art therapy and education. Like I was teaching kids, I was working in a sketchbook. I was focused on sort of my magical realism style and like developing emotional intelligence to sort of draw about, you know, emotions and feelings and things. And so the political side, it's very recent. Like it's only been probably since like August 12th, that I started actually like thinking like, no, we need to do that. And also when I started partnering with the Kennedy Center on their Art Summit comic, because what I did for that comics journalism project is I would go to their Art Summit, which they brought together thought leaders from all over the country. And I basically turned the event, sort of distilled it into like a little comic that summed up all the big ideas. And so seeing and hearing what all these different artists were doing, it really made me feel like I needed to step up my game. Because because I have a lot of tools that I needed. I was like, well, I already have I love working with kids, and I definitely will target doing outreach. So I've taught I've taught everywhere. But I've definitely I definitely target the Title I schools. because I can get funding help with that. But I've also worked like juvenile detention centers and at special needs camps. And I've always, I don't know, education has always been, I guess, my political sort of side. It was never my art, because as a young adult author, I really didn't want to rock the boat. As I feel like growing up in the South, I was always sort of raised to be, you can only be a very respectful rebel. You don't want to because I don't want to offend or frighten anybody. So if I want to present something that's really, I don't know, some solid truth, I need to dip it in something really beautiful or really funny. And so thinking about how to actually talk about things now, that are more political, it's very new for me. And I think it's because it's sort of well, screw it. This is too, I gotta do something. Because before it was well, I don't know, and who am I? But now it's well, I don't know, as an introvert, the only reason I got into making art and doing some of this more outgoing stuff is because growing up, I'd always I'd be hey, there's that truth. Does anyone else? No one? Ah, shit, does that mean I have to do something with that? So I feel like that's the story of my life, is that I'll do things just because I'll see something or think of something. I'm well, how come that's not happening? And I would get frustrated and impatient, be well, I guess I should do something. So
I think that's a good place to stop, because we only have a minute.